So, here's a little update since we last talked, which was a long time ago. You remember the GSXR 600 I had, which was ridiculously loud? I've no longer got that. I was using it for a while, but I moved out, so I've got my own place, which is nice. So then the bike had to go on the back bench for a little while whilst I recovered some monies due to moving out. Then it started to misfire really badly, which slowly got worse and worse and worse. And towards the end, to get it back home, I had to keep the bike at 9,000 RPM just to keep it running. Got it home. Then my car stopped working. Well, it didn't stop working, it ran out of tax. Same thing. So, as of that time, I had to borrow my brother's bike and put my motorbike at my mum's house. And then quite recently, someone backed into my bike, into the GSXR. It ripped part of the rear fairing off, cracked the rest of the fairings and everything. And because of my limited funds, I had to sell it to parts, so I no longer have a motorbike that's running, so that makes me very sad. We'll be getting another bike, obviously. But what I wanted to talk about today is this thing here. I've had this for a couple of months now, and it hasn't really gotten anywhere. It's a bit of a project that I'm trying to work on. It used to have a headlight, but upon trying to get the electrics to work, the headlight fell off and it cracked the lens. I've got to get another headlight for it, which shouldn't be too bad because it's only a generic 7-inch round headlight, I think. So I've got all the electrics and stuff in a paper bag. You can see by the webs and stuff why it's been sitting there. It's a Chinese replica of a YBR 125. I can't actually remember what make and model this is, but it doesn't actually matter because they're all the same. This particular year, anyway, up until very recently, used a Chinese replica of an old Honda CG 125 motor. Which is the pushrod variant rather than the overhead cam variant. For some reason they all have an EGR, an exhaust gas recirculator. I don't know why, but they all have it on there. My favourite thing is the HT cap is metal, which is lovely, which always makes me nervous because it's a high tension cable, and the bit that you're meant to be able to hold on to stop you from getting electrocuted is conductive. I haven't got a shock since. I haven't got shocked yet, which was quite nice. When I first got this, it would fire, but it would fire with the key in or out or the ignition turned off, whatever. So long as you could kick it over, it would fire. With the electrics on or off, and that in part is due to the fact that one, it's carbureted, so long as the rotating assembly within the engine is rotating, it's going to be pulling fuel through and working in that sense. Also, the spark for the engine comes directly from the alternator. Doesn't actually come through the electrics particularly at all. So long as the alternator is turning, it will spark, and also this pickup to fire the CDI unit is on the alternator as well. So, and obviously the alternator is connected to one side of the crankshaft. So as long as the crank is rotating and all the piston and everything is attached, it will actually fire. Now these Chinese motorcycles, door closed. They have what's called an earth out ignition system. So the ignition is very, very simple. It's got basically 3 feeds to it. You got a live, an earth, and a neutral. Live and neutral obviously go to your battery, but it's got an earth on it. Now I'm not super 100% sure. What I think it does is it earths the coil. So when the ignition is off, the earth is open. So the moment that the ignition tries to fire, it earths what would become the spark back to the frame and then back to the battery, which obviously takes one of the 3 units of the combustion triangle out, and it stops it from firing and igniting the fuel. Now what had happened is they'd taken this to a garage because the triple tree bearing needed replacing. He took all the front end off and everything, did the work. When you put it back on again, it wouldn't turn off when you asked it to, and it was because the earth running into the ignition had broken, so I had to reconnect the earth, and now it will turn off when I wanted it to. The kill switch works, because it even affected the kill switch. Like, you couldn't turn off the kill switch or the ignition or anything, so it will turn off when you want it to now, and obviously it will sort of turn on when you want it to. I've had it running, but it's had this really odd thing recently where it will run, but only if you get it to fire right away. If you don't, it will flood, and then once it fires up, it will continue to rev its tits off. And an important thing to remember about these Chinese motorcycles, or at least this era, is they don't have rev limiters. So they will just rev until they throw a rod or the bearings go or something. So, but yeah. So that's the fun bit. I have had it running, as I say. What the problem is at the minute is, well, because it's a needle. It's not got a diaphragm in the carburetor. The needle and like the venturi within the carburetor that controls the air and fuel is connected directly to the throttle cable. So when you open the throttle up, it pulls just the pin and everything up as fast as you can pull the throttle up, which is a nice, very simple design. The only downside of it is if you are at low RPM and you just rack the throttle back open, you lose all the vacuum in the carburetor, you don't put any fuel through, and the engine starves and stalls until the engine is very, very warm. So when it's cold, you've really got to be careful on the throttle, which is the problem with the old school style carburetors. And I don't know why we're still using it, because the diaphragmed carburetors were invented around World War II, I believe, for the Spitfires. Once upon a time, if the Spitfire dived nose down like that, it would starve and stall, which is why you see all the Spitfires doing this. To keep fuel in the bottom of the carburetor, they then invented the diaphragm carburetor to try and get around that. So it's an old design. I don't know why they still use just the lifting pin thing. I guess it's cheap to manufacture without having to change anything. But yeah, in that this is stiff. So at the minute, the throttle, regardless of this bit, is locked open. So I've got to free that off again, which is loads of fun. It's basically stuck because of disuse. But as I say, if you don't get it to fire right the first time, it will continue rev until it's exhausted its extra fuel supply and calms down, which can take ages. And it's also very, very noisy because it's a single cylinder and it bounces around and revs and vibrates and makes loads of noise, which is a pain in the ass. What I think is going on, I might be talking at my ass, but what I think is going on is, this is the carburetor, obviously into the engine block. You've got the, my hand. This is a bit here, where the throttle cable goes to. Then you've got your venturi bit in here and your pin, which comes down towards your your fuel jet. And this is your float bowl, and in here is a little float, as the name would suggest, and as the fuel fills up inside the float bowl, the little float lifts up until it reaches a point where it stops the fuel from coming back into the float bowl, a little bit like the faucet on a toilet. What I think is happening is I think the float in the carburetor is set too high, so once it runs over, it will fire up and rev. There's too much fuel in here, and it just continues to bleed off. That's my thought. That might be absolute bollocks, and it might just be a tuning issue with the carburetor. It might just be that there's excess fuel inside the cylinder that's burning out. I honestly am a little bit fuzzy as to why it does it, but I need to stop it from doing it because it's a pain. That's the only thing that's really wrong with it at the minute. Oh, that, and it hasn't got any fuel in it, because during my really cheap period I drained this of fuel to put it in the GSXR to run it whilst really jerks I was working, which I no longer have, which is a pain, and it is sad face. But I need to tidy this place up so I can actually get back in here when I have a free moment in time and work on it. And the reason I'm recording on my phone is I don't have a computer at the minute, so I can't edit videos to put onto YouTube, so I'm just recording straight to YouTube at the minute. Yeah, that's where I am at the minute. Just want to play around with this and try and get it working. And it should be quite a nice little toy. I should have someone who wants it already. It's also got a back box on it, which is fine because it's 125. Like, you know. So yeah, have a nice day.